call, I did want to talk about how to support ourselves when the season changes like this. And so obviously I'm in the Northern Hemisphere. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, this seasonal dialogue is still so relevant, even if you're not approaching winter right now, right? You might be approaching summer, but summer and winter are polarities, right? Winter is the emptiness, right? It's the descent, whereas summer is the full rising and it's the fullness. And they both are pauses. Like the sun pauses in the sky for winter and summer. It's just pausing more full in summer and pausing more empty in winter. So as we shift here in the Northern Hemisphere from the energy of the lungs into the energy of the kidneys, you can already feel like the lungs they've already began to wane. And so things that can show up right now are like congestion in your lungs, like the stuff that's still stuck in there. Things that can show up are like stuffiness in your nose, because the nose is the portal to the lungs. Throat stuff, right? Because the throat, the thyroid is connected to the lungs. It's like how we, let out, like the cadence, the expression of our voice, the chamber of our voice, right? Because our voice is echoing within our lungs, within our voice box. And so I really like to incorporate, of course, like always the breathwork practices. So I do have free videos up in my app, right? So you can always check those out. If you're in the yoga studio, we're always doing a lot of breathwork in there. But incorporating breathwork in the mornings with I didn't bring mine today, but a salt pipe. Maybe I'll link it in the video. A salt pipe is so good for the lungs. And so it's just essentially looks like a little pipe. You can use it in your mouth or your nose. I like to just use it in my nose. And it's filled with Himalayan rock salt, and you drop essential oils in it. So I'll drop yarrow in it to support my lungs. I will drop like eucalyptus as an expectorant, right? Like anything like lung supportive is like the piney, the like, the things that get like hard and like contractive in the autumn. So eucalyptus, pine, like cedar, like the trees, cypress are so good to kind of like expel things out of the lungs. And the other thing you can do if you are in a place that's more dry at this time of year, because sometimes the autumn goes to this like real dry part before it flips to the wetness of winter. But I will take like a big pot of water, heat it up, and then drop like eucalyptus or whatever in it and just put like a towel over my head and breathe it in to get like all that stuff out of my lungs. And so when we do have weak lungs or our lungs aren't our strong organ, it'll show up most at this time of year, right? When we aren't able to process our grief and sadness. Yeah, I'll post a link for the salt pipe. That's my favorite thing in the world. And yarrow oil, it's a emmenagogue, so if you're not pregnant, it's a great oil, but because it will stimulate menstruation. But yarrow oil is a blue oil, and the blue oils like blue chamomile, yarrow, blue tansy, all of these oils have azulene in them, which is a chemical constituent that is like cooling. When there's lots of heat and inflammation in the body, like blue quells the red, essentially. So yeah, I'll post a link for you. And so, we all, and I said this before, come in with like a weak organ system. Whatever organ was like, whatever our mother's overwhelming emotional state was when we were in the womb, that organ will be impacted. So I'll kind of go through the emotional expressions of the organs. And I'll start with autumn, because that's the season that we're in right now in the Northern Hemisphere. Autumn is like grief and sadness. Anxiety can slide into here, and depression's a little bit more complex than that, but that's kind of the overarching emotional imbalance that the lungs feel. So not being able to process our grief and sadness. Like when we process these emotions, they process themselves through the lungs, the grief and the sadness through the lungs, letting go through the large intestine. And then as we move through that, we move to the virtue, which is courage. And so the lungs give us courage, right? You can tell by like, when people have like big, strong chests, there's like this energy of courage. And then in winter, the energy of the kidneys, the emotional experience when they're imbalanced or when they're working through whatever emotion, it's fear. So whether that's inner fear or outer fear, like fear of the world, fear of not feeling safe in the world, or fear that you can't provide for yourself, that you can't meet your physical needs, because as we move into the kidneys, and I'll talk about it more near the end, it's all about your physical safety, right? In winter, it's like, I have to stay warm, I have to have enough food. Like when we were creatures in nature, those are the big things. It's like, got to prepare for winter. I've got to stay warm. I've got to hibernate. I've got to conserve my energy because there's not enough food around. So if I'm wasting my energy, I'm going to have to find more food that might not be there, right? And so when we move through those emotions of the kidneys, what comes through is clarity, right? And so clarity is the virtue of the kidneys. And then when we move into spring, the liver, and this is like, I mean, many of us can relate to this emotional experience, anger, frustration, rage, right? Like those like bursting up and out emotions that just like want to explode out, because the shooting energy of spring, the wood energy, brings like those emotions that are on that spectrum come up and out. And so this is how the Taoists learn to understand the energy moving in the body, right? Whereas winter, it's just deep and it's heavy, like those feelings of fear pull you down and are like really heavy and they feel kind of swampy, whereas that anger shoots up and out, right? And so these opposite emotional expressions. And then when we, it's healthy, right? It's healthy to feel anger. What's not healthy is when we either bottle it up because then we're like a pressure cooker ready to explode, or when we are always feeling that emotion, when we're always angry at the people around us, right? That's when the liver's in imbalanced state. And so when we do feel anger, like channel it, let it out. When I'm angry, like go to work or do some art, like use it, right? Because it is a really powerful energy. But when we move it out, the virtue that comes through is patience, right? And so that's the medicine of the liver, is moving through that anger and finding that patience, right? And so like, how many times have you been in a situation where you're so angry at someone, you could let it out, right? And it's very reactionary. But when you let the emotion move through your body and you just like give yourself space and time, you come out the other end and it's like, oh, actually, like it's fine. Like I don't need to be that angry, or like you're just not. And so it can be a very impulsive, right? That fire energy, like spring, toddlers, infants, the spring of their life, the morning of the day, that Aries energy, right? At the beginning of the astrological year is very impulsive. And then so the liver feeds the heart, and the heart is summer. And so summer is this full expression of, like mania, like overexcited. Like overexcited, or you see someone with like crazy eyes and like a red face. Like this is like the heart imbalance, right? Or they're like constantly slipping over their words or stuttering their speech, or the words aren't coming through fluently because the tongue is the organ connected to the heart. Then this is where we'll see heart imbalances, where the heart in its virtue is just simply content, like content with life as it is. It doesn't need to feel like over happiness or like over, like anytime we're reaching those emotions that can swing, this is when we're not in this middle path of the virtue of the organs. And then the last one is the spleen. So the spleen is another one that I think is really prevalent in our culture, which is worry, right? Worrying all the time, overthinking, overchewing it. Like, oh my God, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Like always overthinking, and our muscles get dense because the muscles and the mind are linked together. And that's why when we have these big emotional experiences that we don't integrate or process, or we repress, they get held in the tissues of the body. And that's why we can go into a massage or go into body work, and it's like, we come out and we're like, we sometimes feel worse. We're like, well, I'm so emotional right now. Like I've got so much going on, because they're like literally moving all these experiences that are stuck in your tissues through your body. And so that's why, especially in my yoga practice, I don't teach you to overwork your muscles, right? Because they're already doing what they're doing, and they're bringing you to the place where you are for like a reason. And the only way to get out of that place is to actually work in your bones and your structure, because that's what's going to bring you to center and allow those emotional experiences to move out of the body. And so, and the virtue of the spleen is empathy, like being able to empathize with others. And so those are kind of like the emotional experiences, the more esoteric parts of the organs. And so, the physical parts are like, yeah, you got 2 little kidney beans on the back of your body, you got a liver on the right side, you got a spleen on the left side, and that works with the stomach. And you've got like your heart, beating, you can feel it. But there's deeper emotional aspects that are rooted into the more soulful or, spiritual parts of your being. And so when we make this transition from autumn, where things are like maybe coming up through our lungs, the final grief and sadness of like the experiences that we've had through the year are being processed, because in the yang seasons of spring and summer, we're out in the world, we're having our experiences, we're with our community, and those are the seasons of a relationship. So maybe we're coming through in and out of relationships. And so these leave like experiences in our bodies that need to be processed. Whereas in the autumn and winter, it's meant to be more yin, more feminine, more retreat, more receptive, these are the seasons where we're not actually meant to be out so much in community and we're meant to be more within. And so that's when we get to process, like, oh, this relationship, like we get to process the experiences that we've had. We get to process the things that like maybe didn't go the way that we wanted them to go, but we're learning from them, right? We're having the reflections in autumn and winter so that in spring, when we are having the year again, right, which is this revolution that happens in the seasonal wheel, the same energies will always come to us when we're in that resonance, right? But then we get to choose differently. And that's the big thing, is because each season we're learning, or each seasonal cycle and seasonal wheel and seasonal year, like we're learning as we go, right? And then the next year things come up and we're like, I remember that from last year. I think I'm going to go over here. Or this really worked well for me. How can I bring it in and expand and grow from it? And so it's just insights, right? This time of the year is the time to really like, if you journal, get the journal out. If you like dream, get the dream journal out, right? Put it by your bed. Really start to take things from the spiritual world, or, you know, the things that are beyond these like physical senses of like touch, feel, taste. You know, there's the senses beyond that, that are hearing all things, that are feeling all things, that are smelling the situation even before it's come. And if you do work with your dreams, I'm going to bring in a dream talk this winter, but it's so good to do it at this time of year when we're resting more, when we are getting things from the other world more, not this material world we all agree on, the other world that's happening too. You know, it's just, it slides in through our dreams. And as the liver starts to awaken in spring, the liver is the organ that dreams really, more and more of this will come in. And the dreams are so revealing because they tap you into all time and space. So not just this present moment, but like future moments, past moments, which are all, you know, happening simultaneously. And so at this time of year, it's really good to like get your practices down, to go within, right? To bring things into your home, like to choose something that you've really wanted to do or you really wanted to learn, whether it's knitting, whether it's crocheting, whether it's learning to play a musical instrument, learning to paint, wanting to draw. Like, what's that thing that is on your, like the back of your mind, the back of your heart all the time where you're like, oh, like life gets in the way and I wish I just had more time for this one thing, or I really wanted to learn this one thing. Like, you get to bring that in as we come into winter and carve out time for it, right? Because if you're constantly busy out in the world in winter, that's missing the point of the gifts of winter, which is to retreat and to come within. Because as we shift from the lungs, as we like expel the last of our experiences that we can like let go of and come into winter empty, it gets to be this question of what are you going to fill yourself up with? And so autumn is setting the container, right? The element of metal. So that in winter, when the fertile waters rain down, it starts to fill your container. And so you want to come into winter empty, right? You want to come into winter knowing that I get to bring in whatever I want. I get to create the space and time for me to fill what my soul wants to do, what I'm like, what I feel like I want to learn this year. And this feeds a part of us that is like, I feel so essential, but so left behind by society, where it's like we're being told to like just be successful and like blah, 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 like set ourselves up. When there's like this part of our soul that's like, I just want to do this for me. I don't want to make money off of it. I don't want to like, it doesn't have to be anything for the world. Like, it's just for me. I just want to do it for myself, for my soul, for my heart, and maybe something comes of it. But that's not the point in winter. It's what do I want to bring in? What do I want to learn? How am I going to spend my time? Because you have a lot more time inside in winter, a lot of more time in the dark in winter. And so if you don't have a personal practice, like this is where I love to bring in more yoga in winter, when the body's feeling a little stickier, when you have more space and time to have a conversation with your body, when there's less external pulls in your life. And I really love, what I love most about winter is the darkness that's in earlier. And so when you wake up earlier and you wake up before the sun, you're in this Brahmutara, it's like this sacred hour of like the creative potential before the day is even birthed. If you've ever been to India, like, you know, like everyone wakes up at like 4 a.m. and they do their like rituals and their ablutions and they're, you know, making funny sounds because they're like purging their whatever the Indians do. It's wild. But the point is that this is the sacred time they used to cleanse and purify themselves and then have a conversation with God, whether it's sitting in meditation, whether it's doing your yoga practice, whether it's doing that thing that you want to learn how to do, right? The best time to do it is at this sacred hour when that creative potential is like just about to be birthed. And so when the waters of winter descend down, again, they birth this energy of the kidneys. And the kidneys are these two little organs that sit, if you do not know, behind your T12, like right behind the diaphragm in the back of the body on both sides. The left kidney is the maternal stalk, so you get it from your mother's side, and the right kidney is your paternal stalk. So in Taoism, the kidneys are known as your prenatal chi. It's that which was like that birthed you, right? And so we come in with the matrix that we came in through, right? Our father and our mother, whatever that means. And then that matrix grows because they have their own matrices of energies and like the people that you will be around, that you will be learning from as you are growing up. And so winter becomes this time that we get to play with this ancestral stew that's crystallized in our bones, so to speak. And when bones are malleable, when they're soft, right? Like bone marrow is moving through your bones. This is not hard. This is not like things that you should be able to break easily. This is what happens when our bones dry out. And so that's why winter's water, when the kidneys are water. And that's why it's good to play with the waters of your body to keep your body moist, to create a little bit of heat in your body in the winter, knowing that you know how to like play with this element of water, which is not overdoing it, not overworking, not like that heat, right, that we create in our society of like achievement and, you know, like all like excelling, like all the things that society tells us that creates a ton of inflammation in the body. When we rest and retreat, this is when we're playing more with the watery element of our body. And so this is the season where we get to look at all this stuff and be like, oh, like this is wild. I can't believe, you know, like this has been influencing me so much. And you don't know until you really see it, which is when we get to be reflective and have self-awareness. And so a really great way to do that, I mean, the best way to do that is if you have kids and they're around your parents, like you'll see it. You're like, oh, they treat my child like how I was treated in a sense. And the things in our parents that trigger us are because that was the parts of our childhood where we were like, oh, I wasn't supported the way I needed to be supported, the way that my soul wanted to be supported. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with the situation, right? Because it's always your perception of the situation. But those are the things where it's like, how can I support myself here now that I'm an adult? I don't need to be like nurtured by other people. You know, it's like, how can I nurture myself? How would that make me like, how can I create this container for myself in winter where when I have needs, I meet them? Because so many times when we have needs, we're like, we wake up and we're like, oh, I'm just so tired today. And you're like, okay, I got to get to work. And we just immediately abandon our needs, right? Because our need was to rest. And so we're kind of into this box of society that's telling us we have to do all this stuff that every single day forces us to abandon our needs. And so I really encourage you as we like dive into like the beginning of winter to have this intention of, you know, actually feeling what those needs would feel like, even if you do have to go to a job and make money. Like, yeah, we're living in a modern day world, but you know, you wake up and you're like, gosh, I'm really tired today. Where can you actually give yourself more rest within the confines and the framework of the life that you've set up for yourself? And if the life you set up for yourself isn't what you want, how are we going to shift that, right? And so, you know, there's no limitations. It's only what you tell yourself. And so when we're working with these deeper ancestral waters, a lot of the stories we tell ourselves are from our upbringing when we were so heavily imprinted as a child. And so, you know, if we always heard like scarcity with money, then we are always going to feel like money is scarce. If we grew up in a household where like, you know, it was like we never heard about that kind of stuff. It was just like, you know, the parents were like giving me the needs that I needed. And like, it wasn't like, I don't have money for that. I don't like, you know, that programming, then we're not going to feel like money is scarce. And so we just get to look at all these places where our stories are incongruent with how we truly feel. And so if it's like, oh, I know I could be so abundant right now, but I'm feeling like I can't meet my own physical needs or I don't have enough. So where does that come from? And then can we nurture ourselves within the framework of our lives so that we can start to feel and have that full expression of like, oh, I do have a lot right now. I have a beautiful home. I'm very warm right now. There's like food in my fridge, which is radical in winter, right? And so we just shift this narrative of instead of looking at the stories we're telling ourselves in the places where we do feel like this lack, we start to move into the energy of the overflow, right? And so this, you can use any example for this, right? Whether it's your health, whether it's your relationships, whatever it is, I'm just using money as a baseline because we all need money to live, right? And so when we're sitting in this frequency of like, oh my God, like look at all that's around me. Look at where I live. Like something that feels like overflow in your life, you train your body to stay in that frequency of overflow. And then when you're approaching these other places in your life that feel deficient, you can more easily shift your energy to move into, right? Because we're all resonating beings into overflow. And so it's like, okay, I'm feeling lack here, but how can I come back to, I have so much, and look at that part of it, and then bring that energy into, well, what can I create? What can I do to feel more abundant in this part of my life? And you just shift into solution oriented rather than always looking at problems, right? And so winter is a really powerful and profound time to reprogram like all of the cells of your being because it's darker. You have the time and space if you're giving it to yourself, right? Winter is the time where the waters are descending down, where your ancestry, your kidneys are awakened and opened. And it's the time where whatever you do in winter starts to feed and nurture the soils that the seeds of spring will be planted in. Right. And so again, these are like just very esoteric baseline, like your life is a garden. Okay. So you are soil. And in winter, it's like all the nourishment gets pulled so deep down into the root system of the earth. And everything in the material world looks like it's sleeping. And in that root system of the earth, things are happening. It's not like the whole, like everything, it's a polarity, right? In summer, everything below the soil is sleeping and everything above is awake, right? And so we're in this polarity in winter of the depths of what's stirring below the soil, of the animals resting and hibernating below the soil, right? Restoring their energy. And so in winter, the big obedience of the kidneys is like, don't overdo it, right? That's where you're going to get sick. That's where you're going to come into spring exhausted and you're not going to have energy to have visions. And you're going to come into spring just like, oh, it's like last year, I guess, you know? And we really want to start to evolve through the seasonal wheel of our lives so that every year we're like, I can't believe I accomplished that this year. And the next year you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is even possible, right? Because we want to keep blowing our minds every single year of like the limitlessness that we are, because this is also flowing into the collective. This is the universal vision, right? Like, how do we take self-responsibility for our lives? And then that leads into, right, the collective universal vision, because that frequency becomes part of this collective soup. And so it's like almost like, you know, when things are resonating together, they're more powerful. When things are discordant and like, oh, like, you know, a crowd that's like going crazy, like nothing can move or happen, you know, it's like all bottlenecked. And this can happen in the body when it's not aligned. And then the moment it all lines up, the moment things are resonating and there's a harmony, like, you know, you think of an orchestra and like just the power of that resonance of harmony, right? And how far you can hear it and how nice and it sounds on the body. And so that's really where we get to approach this from. And there's like an incredible, it's kind of related to it, but have you ever heard of like the 100 monkey syndrome or whatever? I don't even know what it's called, but basically they did these studies where like they were teaching these monkeys these specific things over here on this island. And when enough of the monkeys learned it in all of these different places, all of the monkeys could do it in the whole world. And so it was like there's like this tipping point where it's only a small portion of people or whatever it is that resonate together impact the whole entire collective field. And it can be looked at like evolutionary leaps, right? And so we really can't like, I don't know the word for this, like we have to know how powerful we are. You know, like our tiny actions that we do every day for ourselves that put us into greater resonance, like we have to realize how powerful that is in winter. Even when you think no one's looking, you're like, what's the point of me doing this? The point is so big. It's so important to do these things, which is doing something that fills your heart with love because everyone around you will feel it, right? And then that will move out into the collective because those people are feeling it and they're coming into a different frequency and a different resonance. And so, especially, this is a very powerful moment in time where we just left Pluto, right, in Capricorn on the 19th yesterday, and we're moving into Pluto in Aquarius for the next 248 years or whatever. Aquarius is air. It's like, you know, we're moving beyond this physical form and realizing, because it's always been there, that we are all connected, and the internet's just a metaphor of this or a reflection for us, right? We are all connected. Like, I can influence you over there and you're like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Like, I'm going to go out into the world and like my day is different, right? And we can all influence each other through our minds and through our bodies and through our beings without holding physical space together. And so it's so powerful. And so winter is this time where our bones are being activated, right? And so being back into the reflection of the body, it's like what we want to do is learn how to move in alignment, to learn how to conserve our energy. And that's why even in my yoga practice, I'm not teaching you to like work a bunch of muscles and get exhausted. Like that's the last thing I want for you. I want you to come out of your practice with more energy. And the more you can find the alignment in your body again and again and again and again by working in the center of your bones, by shifting your bones, by shifting your posturing, then you are moving into so much more ease in the body, so much more energy for the other things in your life. And so in winter, you don't need to run a marathon. In winter, you're not supposed to be just exercising your muscles all the time. Like, the practice changes so much in winter. And if you're already not a part of my longevity series, that's what I'm doing in my longevity series. It's how can we work in the bone structure? And as the bones are awakened in winter, right, we actually get to support and nourish the bone marrow, which is your mind, which like goes into your brain and all of this, right? How do we move into the structure of our body and actually realign and repattern our body so that we are in this postured alignment that doesn't require our effort, right? And then when we walk out into our life, whether we're running, whether we're walking, whatever we're doing, it's like, I'm actually not exerting that much energy. I'm just holding up my body anymore. And so I have so much more energy to pour into all of these other things in my life. And hopefully it was one of those things that you took into winter with you that you wanted to do, that you've been wanting to do forever. And now you have more energy for it and you have more time for it because you're doing everything in your life more efficiently. And so everything you do is going to ripple out into every other piece. And that's why I love working with the body, because as you work in your body, every intentional movement that you're doing, every way in which you're becoming more aligned in your body, what is happening is that your whole life is becoming more aligned because you're resonating differently, right? And all of a sudden that little torque in your body that was like bottlenecking the energy in your body, that was like blocking the energy from going into your liver or whatever it is, right? Because it's going to block it somewhere. Now this organ is being fed and the whole entire organ system is working more efficiently. And so this is where we look at this body as, it's like, holistic health, but it's beyond that because it's like whole life health, because it's rippling out into every facet of your life. So I wanted to come on here, and if you have questions, pop them in the chat. But to just really prepare you for this transition that's happening for the darkest day, right? Which is I don't know if it's the 20th or the 21st, one of those 2 days, the darkest day, where you really get to set these intentions of how do I want to be this winter? How do I want to take care of myself? What are the things I'm going to bring in, right? What are the things that are going to feed my soul? How am I going to navigate the darkest depths of winter? Because if you don't have these things, winter is so hard. It's so hard. I remember being in university and having to study for all of my finals and being in Canada. So it's like 4 hours of sunlight. It's horrible. And having my happy light right here just on my face. I was so sad every winter because I wasn't doing things that were feeding my soul. But the moment I shifted my practices, when I became aware of yoga and of like, oh, I can do things I like. Like, I had no idea. Winter changed so much for me, and I actually got excited to be like, oh, it's getting dark out. Like, I get to take more time for myself. I get to be inside of myself more. I get to like bring in the things I want to learn. And winter is always when I learn to do stuff. It's when I've learned to crochet. It's when I've learned to knit. It's when I've learned to play music. So I'm always wanting to bring something in so that I can just enjoy being in me, in myself, with my own frequency, and not having to worry about anyone else. So this is making me look at winter in a whole new light. Yeah, I don't enjoy the season because of the lack of the light and the coldness here. I think I can enjoy it this year. You will enjoy it this year. We get to be our own lights in winter, right? And that's this metaphor of the candle, of lighting a candle and being like, I am my own light. And what are the things that are not allowing you to be the light? What are the things in your life where you're like, this feels really heavy and I'm sticky and I don't want to do this now? Because in winter, that will feel more potent. The things in life that are not giving you inner light are going to feel even that much more heavier in winter because there's not this external light that's like, okay, I can do this because it's sunny outside. No, it's like, do I really want to do this? And so I love how you share and see the seasons. The seasons are so magical. I've always had a deep love affair with the seasons since I was a little girl. I would like go out into live by River Valley, forage all the time. And it wasn't until I lived off grid, like the last 6 years or 5 years or whatever it's been, that I'm like, oh, I'm in deep reverence of the seasons. I'm watching all the animals all the time. I'm preserving stuff. I'm like finding different ways that I can be, not that I need to, I can go store and buy food, right? And I do, but it's like, how can I actually, even though I'm living in a modern day world, be more in tune with the seasons, eating more protein and meat in the winter, right? Like, I'm eating like 3 meals of just straight protein right now. Any specific recommendations in the daily yoga practice to empty out the ancestral junk? Awareness is enough. Awareness is never enough until you take action. Nicole, are you in the virtual yoga studio? Yeah, so kidney stuff, and like the virtual yoga studio goes through more of like a seasonal dialogue, so we do work more with the seasons in it. Yeah, you are. Okay, perfect. So we got lots coming up. But the winter stuff is moving your waters. So I like to do cat cows in circles, or you can just like sit in virasana and just do circles and breathing. So I always inhale forward and exhale back and just really create this fluidity in the body. And like I'm a very watery being. I will admit this to the point where like um people are like, can you stop moving? But I'm usually just like when I'm talking to people, I'm just moving. Like rocking myself back and forth. So you do you. But I am always like just trying to move my spine and keep the fluidity in my spine. The moment something's sticky, I can feel it. And I'm like, ooh, I got to get this out. I don't want to feel like this nagging, like pulling in my body. And so when we're working with ancestral stuff, when we do start to reprogram the bones, like if you are in my longevity series, this series is dedicated to restructuring the bones of your body through 3 sessions. And then it's followed by 3 yoga nidras, which if you haven't done a yoga nidra, there's a free one up in the longevity series details in my app. But you lay down and you just lay there and start to reprogram your beliefs. So you know when things come up, like when you're not feeling safe, you're like, okay, this is a belief system I hold. I don't feel safe in this body. And there could be like moments from your childhood where like you didn't feel safe. You know, you can look at all that kind of stuff. But the action is, what are you gonna do for yourself to feel safe now? Right. So it's almost like reprogramming the inner child within us. And so it could be like, right now to feel safe, I actually just need to cry. Right now to feel safe, I need to know that it's okay to be me right now. And then so that would be where you would have to go hang out with people that let you be you. And so if we keep positioning ourselves for failure, as I like to call it, it's like you go hang out with someone that doesn't appreciate you and you're like, I don't feel safe in front of this person. You're just like, if I go hang out with normies, I'm like, I don't know what to say to you all. Like my life's so different. And so positioning yourself in the right place and time so that you do start to feel the things that you want to feel. You have so many amazing options. I'm like, where do I begin and start? You begin, and you get entry books that talk about all the esoteric information. Well, I have my yoga as origami book that I wrote for all of this. And it has the body parts, but the seasons, the organs, Alison M. Haas, I'm going to write it in the chat, has a really beautiful book. And I don't know if it's so esoteric. Oh, Alison is with an N. But it is all about being healthy with the seasons. I think that's what it's called. Staying healthy with the seasons is a beautiful book just to connect in with more of your organs and these seasonal practices. The esoteric stuff, gosh, has been pulled from so many Taoist teachers that I've had over the years and like the Taoist information. So I don't even have one book that's all about the organs and body parts. But the mapping in Taoism is what I weave into all of my courses online too. So those are really great ones to take. And then the body parts, kidney parts of the body are, this is so simple. Like it's so simple that it's like, okay, middle parts of the body, because the kidneys are in your middle. So your ears are your kidneys. It's shaped like a kidney. Your armpit is shaped like a kidney, right? Your elbow is a kidney point. Your knees are kidney points. The arches of your feet, if you put them together, are shaped like a kidney. And so this is where you'll start to see kidney stuff show up in the body. Your legs are extensions of your kidneys. It's all lower body stuff. There's substantiation, tenacity, how you hold your ground and stand your ground. Things that show up in people's feet, I know there's something going on with their foundation, which is kidneys. How physically safe do you feel? Right? Your hearing is like the most primal. I mean, the smelling is the most primal sense, but hearing is, it's how you feel safe, right? At the moment you can't hear what's going on, like people that wear AirPods and like walk around all day, I'm like, what are you doing? You like, are you so disconnected? If that's you, I'm sorry. But like, if you can't hear the information around you, the nervous system does not feel safe. Because if you can't hear the car coming behind you, well, you can't see it because you can only see what's in front of you. So hearing is like one of the most important things that we can tap into to feel safe. So like when I need to soothe myself, I just do an oceanic breath and just listen to it. And that's not an ujjayi breath, which is like so strong. It's just like the waves of the ocean breath. And I'll just close my eyes and listen to it. You can put on the waves music, you can go to ocean and hear it, right? But this breath that comes in and out, or this the noise that comes in and out, really soothes our kidneys and our nervous system and our waters. Yesterday I was so emotional while talking to my nephew. He didn't quite understand, and either did I, but it was a different person today. Yeah, and you know what's so important with us with children? Like the way that I approach like my own emotions with my daughter is like if I'm angry, I'm like, well, I'm really angry right now. And I'll like go outside and throw something. And I'm like, oh, that feels good and so much better. Like I got it out. Like, let's go, let's move on. Or if I'm like sad, I'm like, I just need to cry right now. And so she'll just like watch me cry. And it's really healthy for kids to like see us in our emotional bodies. Because like when I was a kid, I didn't see any emotions. And I was like, it is not safe to feel things. And that's how a lot of us were raised, right? And so when we can actually shift this and approach our own personal life and be like that example for other people, it's like it's actually okay to feel these emotions. And when we feel them, they move out. And then I watch her when she's upset, she'll go outside and throw something. And not to hurt anyone, but she'll just throw it because she's seen me just throw it like somewhere where, I just throw it into a field. And she'll just do that and she'll be like, oh, that feels good, And so it's like just teaching kids how to actually express themselves, their emotional body, because they are emotional beings. Like kids need to, and this is where we like can reprogram our inner child is like, how am I feeling right now? Where's this feeling living in my body? Could this be from my childhood? Ask yourself, oh, I remember this time. And it's like, okay, what do I need to do to support myself right now? Which will support this younger part of you. Like, is it to go read a book? Is it to go cry? Is it to go be alone? Is it to go do this? And just being like really okay with how you're feeling in every moment. The moment an emotion lasts for days and days and days, like this is where there's something that you're not paying attention to, right? Because they should move through quickly. And so this is where you have to look at the deeper layers of like, okay, why am I still feeling like this? Like when I go through a day and it's like heavy all day, I'm like, it's not okay that I'm still feeling heavy. It's not okay that I'm not okay. Like, and there's something okay with not being okay, but when it lasts too long, that's not okay. Because I need to support myself in a way that I'm not supporting myself, or this would be moving through me. Um, yeah, everyone has earbuds in. Yeah. Yeah. And so, we are humans that are balancing this duality of a really modern day world, which also has a lot of really incredible benefits, like me sitting here with you all and having my app of like over thousands of members, just like being here and listening to this information and like me being able to impact such a greater group of humans. So there's this beautiful part of this modern day world, and there's the part that we have to balance and detox, right? That we have to really be aware that like, do I need to be bringing in some stuff? Do I need to be watching the news? No. Do I need to care about like I always say, especially with like the things of the world right now, like can you make a difference with what you're listening to? And anytime I'm listening to something or I'm hearing something or someone's talking about something, and I'm like, I can actually make a difference in what you're telling me. So like I don't need to be hearing it. And it's not that I'm oblivious, like that's not the point. It's like, what can I do today to impact the people around me that I can be empowered in that can change lives? Not can I listen to more depressing stuff and feel like I can't do anything about it? That's not helpful, honestly. And so we really want to like shift this narrative to within that is like, okay, this is how I can make a difference today. This is how I can impact my community today. And it's so much more empowering than listening to depressing information and not being able to do anything about it. Right. And so always looking at ways you can make a difference, always looking at ways you can make an impact, even if it's tiny, right? That's an impact. But when we're getting depressed by the things we're listening to, when, the things that we are consuming are not letting us feel vibrant and full of life, like this is where you get a look at, do I want this in my life? Or can I start to shift this so that I can be the person I want to be, so I can live inside of myself? And it's never for anyone but you. You have to live inside of you, right? You have to go to bed with yourself at night. Nobody else does. Like they might, but like people come and go, right? And like you are always living inside of you. So how are you going to live with yourself best? What is going to be the best way that you can support yourself? What are the choices that you need to make today, even if they're hard? So you can be like, oh, I could go to bed tonight and be like, I did that. Like I honored myself today. Like I want to be with myself every day. Like I love time alone. I used to hate time alone until I was like, I got to go on dates with myself and like learn to love myself, because there's this void that we just don't get to touch in society the way that we're programmed in schooling, right? And the moment we sit with ourselves and start to enjoy ourselves, it's like, oh, I can actually put myself first. And always by putting ourselves first, we put everyone else first around us, because our soul knows what it needs to do, right? At every moment. And sometimes we're just not listening. And we get to become better listeners to ourselves. And like, remember, it's all a hall of mirrors. So like everyone you see you're resonating in, this is like a part of yourself that you're like being shown all the time, right? And so it's always positioning. Where do I want to position myself? How do I want to be positioned? And the moment I start to shift this conversation with my inner world, the people around me start changing. Or the same people could be there, but they're actually changing in front of me, right? And so it's always you. It starts with you. everything starts with you. You are inside of you. Your mind is projecting your reality. And so, what are the things that you can do today to really look outside of your eyes, which is your home, and be like, God, I love this. Like, this is incredible. And the moment you see something that's like, oh, like, I don't like that. Like, how did this happen? It's like, where do I need to readjust? Where do I need to reorient myself? And the best time to do this is in winter because the liver and the vision awakens in spring. And so we really got to get clear on what we want to see, where we want to drive towards, what we want to do, how we're going to handle our situations, like all of that. So I have my Q&A for my yoga studio in about 14 minutes. So I'm probably going to get off of this call. If you have any questions, write them down in the chat and I can answer them real quick. But yeah, if you do want to have like a really deeply restorative winter practice, the longevity series is incredible. It has 3 nidras. It has these 3 deep dive practices. There's a community forum. There's going to be a live Q&A at the end. And it's opening on Monday. So you will get the first call on Monday for you to do all week. And we're just going to slowly reprogram the bones of the body. And then these are practices that you can do all the time. And the tools that I'm teaching you with the props are incredible. These are ways I self-adjust my body. These are the ways that I shift the bones in my body so I feel good. And then, yeah, if you do want more like practices, like weekly practices, then the yoga studio is definitely the place to be if you're not in there already. Otherwise, I'm always here, almost always, every Wednesday. And yeah, if you have any topics that you want to talk about, if you have any things that are coming up, Nicole was the one that was like, how do we get the rest of the congestion out of the lungs? So this is kind of birthed this topic today, and it always just trails off to where it needs to go. But always reach out on my app. You can DM me on Instagram too, but my app's just better because I have so many DMs. And then just what do you want to talk about in these calls? Is the yoga studio good for beginners, Denise? This is the online. It has a mix of everything. Every class is a little different, but the app is better to reach me. I'm always offering suggestions and prop work if you like beginner's mind is the best mind. I would say the beginner is the most advanced that you can have because there's not as many habits you need to iron out. But I also have a yoga course that's linked up with the longevity series, and it's the foundations of Katona yoga. And there's a couple beginner practices in there that just works on the measurements and the fits of the body. I'll link it in the replay of this video as well. But it's on like for sale with the longevity series. So I really think like if you're a beginner and you're just approaching this practice, the longevity series and the Katona yoga foundation is a really great place to start because it's just more in-depth deep dive into the body, where the yoga studio are hour-long practices and 30-minute breathwork practices. You get the whole library of practices since we started in September, and there's a bunch of extras in there too. And then you get a new one every single week. So it is a little bit more like there's some harder poses, there's some easier poses, but I try to keep it pretty basic for anyone to join that can do it, and I always offer variations. Yeah, thank you, Amelia. Amazing. Okay, everyone, I'll link everything in the replay, and I will see you in the next call in my app, on Instagram, wherever we find each other. See you later.